And of course, start by saying that we, as always, acknowledge the Yagara and Turrbal peoples, who are the traditional custodians of Mianjin on the lands on which we meet tonight. And we pay our respect to elders past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples present and otherwise. Firstly, thank you all for joining us tonight. But why now? I think really the next 12 months is going to be absolutely critical in determining Australia's clean energy future. We've got some wonderful panelists here tonight who can tell us about many different aspects of that, and we'll get to the intros in a moment. We, of course, deliberately timed it for when the Queensland Parliament will be voting on the emissions reduction legislation, which is up for Parliament and I believe is being voted and debated on Thursday this week. That's the latest I've heard. We've also had this huge announcement, again, of course, totally planned by us when we arranged this forum, for the Future Made in Australia Act, which was announced, bringing in some really key legislation. And that's trying to emulate and match some of the incredible commitments being made all around the world on energy investment. And look, we're here because elections are looming. Certainly in Queensland, they're looming a lot sooner, but also federally as well. You know, we're within 12 months of it. So politicians are listening. So we really look forward to working with you and campaigning with you. We are going to have tonight a short introduction from all of these wonderful panelists here. I will introduce them each as we go along individually. And we are also going to keep some time at the end for you all to ask questions. So we really want this to be an interactive evening. We don't want you to sit there and go, oh, I wish I'd known this or wish I'd done that. So, you know, please keep those questions and we will have a nice amount of time then for questions, discussions, debate at the end. So firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Tom Dixon. I work with an organisation called Solar Citizens. We advocate on behalf of about 190,000 people around Australia who have taken actions with us, who have signed up, who, like yourselves, want to see a transformation in the world and can see the benefits that solar and all renewables, of course, can offer for Australia and for all of us. You might detect I have a slight accent. I came here more than 20 years ago. And when I came here, I really noticed how sunny it was compared to where I'm from. But I also really noticed the lack of solar panels anywhere. And I couldn't quite work out what was going on. And in a previous life, I was a research scientist for CSIRO. And CSIRO, one of the world's leading pioneers in solar technology. And at the time, and some former colleagues of mine actually smiling in the audience as well, but at the time, CSIRO was selling all of its IP overseas. All of the solar stuff was going overseas. You know, Australia should have been, we are world leaders in solar. So that's where we were. Now that has changed immeasurably. 21 years later, the state in which we are is one of the world leaders in solar energy, and certainly around rooftops. So, and these wonderful people here are going to talk about some of that, how we're harnessing it, what benefits it can have, and how we can make sure that this stuff gets taken up by everybody. It's about climate, it's about justice, it's about social justice. You know, there's so many reasons. And Joel's going to talk about 9 billion of those reasons, I think, in a while. So let me first introduce you, though, to Philippa England. Philippa is a recently retired academic. She used to work here at Griffith Uni, where she taught planning and environmental law. And recently, her and her husband, Mike, have been venturing down the road to a low cost and zero emissions lifestyle. From what I can tell, Philippa seems to be a lot busier now than she was when she was working. So it's great that she could take the time out of her busy schedule to come. So I'm going to hand over to Philippa. But Philippa, so you said to me recently that you'd bought an EV, and I think you'd said that Mike was a bit of a rev head.
Yeah.
So, and you also told me about this amazing road trip. And I would really love it if you could tell us a bit about that road trip. So where did you go? Okay. And how much did it cost you?
Okay, Tom. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, great. Well, welcome everybody. Yes, about 18 months ago, my husband Mike over there, my rev head, bought an EV, came home with it and said, let's go on a road trip. So, of course, we set off on a road trip this time last year. Yeah, we made it all the way up to Cairns, and we made it across to Hewenden and to Winton and to Emerald. That was a bit tricky. But here we are in the White Mountains National Park, having driven down a four-wheel drive only dirt track. Not the most sensible thing to do with a brand new EV, but there you go, we made it. You can try these things. And the good news was we spent $200 covering 5,000 kilometers on that trip across 5 weeks. So yeah, we were smiling all the way, and a lot of people were asking and comparing. But anyway, we got home still smiling, and we thought to ourselves, well, you know, let's harness the energy. Let's do this properly. It's been good to us. Let's be good. And we're going to go green on everything now. So the first place to start was our holiday home. Yes, we're very lucky. We have a holiday home up on the Sunshine Coast. I think we've got a picture of it up there. It's, yeah, one of those, Unit 140. This is part of a body corporate, and we let it out to short-term holiday renters, which means we pay the electricity bills. And it's extraordinary the number of people that go on holiday to a beautiful sunny beach house that's very nicely ventilated and everything, and want to spend their life sitting in air conditioning or something like that. Anyway, because we get extortionate electricity bills. So that was a really good place to start. And we put on, let's see, we had held back a bit because it was in a body corporate setting, and Mike was worried that solar panels would rust out up against the sea breeze. You can see we're right up against the sea there. Anyway, prices going up so much, and you found enthusiasm. We thought we'd do it anyway, and the body corporate didn't stand in our way at all. So that was great. And we've now got 12 kilowatts of solar panels on there, which is fairly recent because it doesn't seem to be on the Google image that I took the other day. Anyway, we were very happy. What was the impact of that? We knocked about $1,000 a quarter off the electricity bills. So we were very happy about that. We're generating 50 kilowatts of energy a day on average, and that's on a south-facing roof at the Sunshine Coast. So that's pretty impressive. That would be 5 times our need and just about covers us with our energy guzzling tenants. And yeah, we're expecting to pay off that investment in about 3 years, I think, really. So we're really pleased about that. Anyway, sitting there feeling really pleased with ourselves, I then read an article about Amber. Now, how many people in the room have heard about Amber, the retailer? Excellent. Well, I read this article, and it said you can get it's a retailer that gives you access to the wholesale price. So in the middle of the day, when there's plenty of solar out from all our lovely rooftop owners, you know, prices can be down to 2 cents a kilowatt. But by evening time, you could be paying 40 or 50 cents for your electricity. So, you know, light bulb moment, we think if we signed up with Amber and could somehow, when the house is vacant, which is half the year, really, harness that energy and put it into a battery, of course, we can send it all back to the web and, you know, double our wins for everybody because we're helping solve the energy crisis and making some money. So, you know, filled with this. So there was going to be a stage 2 up there at Twin Waters. Anyway, we decided. And Mike starts ringing around to get batteries on the to go with the rooftop solar. And all the people we spoke to said, you can't do it. you can't get batteries because you've already got a 10 kilowatt inverter on your electricity system, on your rooftop solar. And the Queensland government, Energex, will only, it's Ergon up there, but anyway, the grid operator will only let you have a 10 kilowatt inverter. So 5 for your solar and 5 for a battery, and you're way over already. So you're stuck. The only thing you could do is get a hybrid inverter and rip out the one you've got and spend more and more money and more embodied emissions. So pulling our hair out, we eventually found someone who said, you can do it if you apply for an exception. So and they would help us do it. So we applied for an exception. On what grounds? I will never know. I was never told. But it then took 5.5 months from the date of application, just about. And we finally get our batteries. Cue the batteries. Here they are. Our babies. You can imagine after 5.5 months, we were pretty excited. So we do call them our babies, the twins. They're beautiful. Now, we've only had these in for about 2 weeks. We've switched over to Amber, and Mike's busy operating them on his phone and trying to work that to maximize the use that we get out of them. One thing we have noticed, though, is that electricity prices are a lot more expensive with Ergon than with Energex. And once you get up to the Sunshine Coast, you're already in regional Queensland getting those higher prices. Now, am I going all right? Have I got a couple more minutes, Tom? 1 more minute? Okay. Just a few key learnings that I want to try and reinforce. Look, if you want to get solar for people for tenants, then I say make the landlords pay, basically. That's why we went out and got solar. You're not going to get it through voluntary action, but if you require that, if you make them pay the electricity bill, they'll be extra motivated, and they'll get a great capital investment. It will pay off in 3 years, and everyone's a winner, in my view. You just got to go with the stick, not just the carrot, in my view. But it's a win-win for everybody. Secondly, I hate grid operators. Okay, so key learning is, okay, you can hate them too, but they need to start changing their rules and accommodating us consumers, because we can do a really good job if we're just given half a chance. Okay, third key learning, while I hate grid operators, I love Amber, love hearts to Amber. Okay, this is my wholesale retailer. Here it is. We've now switched to Amber at home as well. Now, we're fairly light on electricity users. So what Amber is helping us do is to manage our demand. And we've now cut 2/3 off our home electricity bill simply by managing our demand to go with the things. So, I mean, I haven't spent a single cent on any equipment or any fancy gizmos at home, and I've knocked 2/3 off our electricity bills. Well, yeah, you know, even with the car, it's pretty good. One trick we do have, though, is when I'm cooking in the peak period, I now cue the picture. I can charge the electric, my lovely electric, what they call it, air fryer on the car. So that's plugged into the car. Now, I don't normally migrate into the garage to do my cooking, but we run an extension lead from the car, can you believe it, all the way into the kitchen so that I can continue to use my air fryer, even if it's 50 cents. Everybody thinks I'm mad, but hey, look, if you can pay 2 cents for your electricity and have it clean and green to make your dinner, why not, I say. Anyway, like I say, I'm now down to paying 4 cents a kilowatt for electricity on our bills. So, you know, so there, you know, Amber works for me. Love Amber. Okay, there was another key learning there somehow. I said, I hate the grid operator. I love Amber. Make landlords do some heavy lifting. And the last one is batteries. If you're not like me, who relishes the idea of working around demand management as keenly as I do, I've always had a miserly sort of go at things. If you're the person that wants to come home and bung on your air conditioning to cool your house, etc., then you need batteries. Batteries are pretty expensive. It worked for us at the coast because that's a holiday home, so it's an instant tax deduction. But for you know, at home household use, we do need subsidies. So my key recommendation, please listen, solar citizens, is Last year we spent $1.5 billion on cost of living relief for everybody. With $1.5 billion, you could support a $3,000 subsidy for 500,000 household batteries. Wouldn't that be an investment in our future? And just look what subsidies can do. One more slide. This is when they started subsidizing household batteries in California. I'll rest my case.
Thank you so much. I think we'll all be in definite agreement about that, and I think our other panelists as well will certainly touch on lots of different elements of that. And you may be mad, but you are the reason that we're all here tonight as well. So thank you very much, Philippa, for bringing us all here. I'd like to hand over next. We're going to travel back up the coast again to Anne, who represents Zero Emissions Noosa. Anne Kennedy is chair of Zero Emissions Noosa. She's passionate about the transition to renewable energy and emissions reduction, and has worked across diverse industries in public, private and not-for-profit sectors, both nationally and internationally. We are really pleased that Anne could join us tonight, and I would like to ask you to take the floor. And I would really like to ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about what is Zero Emissions Noosa? What does Zero Emissions Noosa do? And how did it come about? How do you go from the individual household level to building it up to something that we can do together as a community?
Thanks, Tom, and welcome to everybody who's here. Great to see some familiar faces in the room, and hope you enjoy the evening. Well, why Zero Emissions Noosa? Because we have lots of passionate people in the Noosa community, and I think passion is the number one driver that you need when you work in community energy, and lots of enthusiasm and energy, personal energy as well. Zero Emissions Noosa came into being in 2017 because Noosa Council in 2016 decided that Noosa Shire should be net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2026. Aspirational target. Will we get there? No. But if you don't have an aspirational target, you'd never get anywhere. So Zero Emissions Noosa was formed by some very passionate volunteers in Noosa who wanted to work with the community to help move the community towards net zero emissions. That was at a time when the Queensland government was only just starting to talk about renewables, so it was a pretty big ask. So what do? We focus on reducing emissions from both station. I think we need to go back a slide or two. Somehow they've flicked into the wrong order, but anyway, never mind. Zero Emissions Noosa concentrates on energy emissions from stationary energy, both business and household, and also from transport emissions. How do we do that? Well, we have a number of projects that we're working on. One is a community battery, and we are doing that because there were a number of large solar generators in the community that couldn't export to the grid. So we didn't like the idea of solar being wasted or not used. So we started investigating how we would do this, and we commissioned a report which suggested that community batteries would be a good way to go. So we will, by the end of this year, have the only community-owned community battery in Queensland. The other 14 will be owned and operated by Energex. Ours will be owned by Noosa Council because we formed a consortium with Noosa Council and Yarra Energy Foundation from Victoria, who are the leaders in this field. And so the benefits from our community battery will go back to the community. Next slide. Thanks, Tom. We're working with Rewiring Australia, and we're one of their expert community partners to help spread the word about electrifying everything and how that will reduce your power bills. So people who have done this have tell us the fantastic savings they're making. So that's one thing that people in the audience can do to help not only reduce emissions, but reduce their energy costs. We don't talk to anyone about reducing emissions. We talk to them about how much money they can save. Everybody seems to like that. We also have done a project on Solar for Strata, which is working with 8 strata communities. So next slide, please. And that has resulted in the biggest solar installation in Noosa, 550 kilowatts on 93 units in the Noosa Lakes Resort. They came upon this solution to help them solve a financial problem with their sinking fund. So someone on their board came up with the idea that if they installed solar, not only did they get the savings from the solar to the unit owners, but the other income that they generate goes to their sinking fund. So a rather innovative way of solving your sinking fund problems if you live in a body corporate. And there's an online manual that goes with that, which we're happy for anybody to share and use. It's on our website, and some videos. We have an EV Expo every year, and we've done 5. This will be our 6th this year, and we've expanded it to the EV and Electrify Everything Expo. And that's about getting the message out to the community about the benefits of transferring to sustainable transport or e-transport modes. 30% of the 5,000 people who come make a purchasing decision. So I think that's a great story to tell about how people can change their behaviour just by understanding the benefits of e-transport. We've expanded it this year to include Electrify Everything to give them even more ways of saving money. And we also have many other projects, but I won't go into those tonight. The key message that I'd like to leave you with is that community energy is a key to the energy transition process. It is the biggest generator of renewable energies that we have at the moment through household solar PV. So advocating to your state and federal MPs about why community energy is important is really important, because the state and federal government, I think that's the missing link at the moment in their policy platforms about transition to renewables. So get out there and talk to your elected representatives. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anne. And if people are wondering how to go about talking to state and federal elected representatives, please do hang around and talk with us later, because we would love to keep talking about it beyond tonight. We are next going to hand over to Claire Silcock from the Queensland Conservation Council. Claire is a renewable energy expert with more than 10 years experience in electricity market modelling, energy policy and community energy development. Claire works on policy reform and advocacy to build renewable energy quickly and build it well to benefit nature and communities in Queensland. So I would just love to hand over to Claire to hear your perspective. So Claire, you said that this is a critical year for climate action in Queensland, and that we've seen significant progress in the rollout of renewable energy over the last few years, and we need to make sure it's done well. So in your perspective, what are the most important policies that the state government and the opposition can announce before the election?
Thanks, Tom. I want to say I wrote engineer there instead of expert, but, you know, maybe a lot of people think they're interchangeable when they describe themselves, so maybe I'll just jump on that bandwagon. Yeah, I think it is important to note that Queensland has made a lot of progress in renewable energy. I worked in the Queensland Department of Energy in 2020 and was very frustrated at the glacial pace of progress in building renewable energy. And causation, correlation, I don't know, but since I left, things have really picked up. And we've seen renewable energy in the last 5 years jump from 15% of Queensland's electricity to 28% now. So we're well on track to meet the renewable energy targets, which, as Tom mentioned, are being voted on this week. And we also think that the emissions reduction target will be voted on this week. So these are two really key pieces of policy advancement in Queensland that the government is putting forward and that the LNP opposition is responding to ahead of the October election. So just on the emissions reduction target, we have a proposed 75% emissions reduction target in Queensland, which is actually the upper limit of what the federal government have said they're looking at for 2035. So it is ambitious, but it is achievable, and it is unfortunately not 1.5 degree aligned. So, just the sobering note on this is we're watching the 5th mass bleaching of the Great Barrier Reef in 8 years. We really need to be on a 1.5 degree aligned path to have a hope of saving tropical reefs like the Great Barrier Reef. And unfortunately, the targets that we have fought, everyone in this room I'm sure has fought for, are a great step, but they're not the end goal that we need to be at yet. And Queensland is the leader in rooftop solar. I think we have most rooftop penetration in the country, but unfortunately we also have the most proposed coal mines. So there's still a lot of work to do in convincing governments and the general public that climate action is broader than solar panels on roofs. It's about changing our industry, our transport, our agriculture sectors, and particularly our coal mining sectors, which release huge amounts of fossil fuels here and globally. But on the energy here, it is really important that Queensland shows the way and how we can achieve renewable energy, and the targets, how we get there is really important. At the moment, we're at a very critical and volatile time for the renewable energy transition in Queensland. We're seeing genuine concerns in terms of biodiversity impacts and community engagement with the communities that are hosting a lot of this infrastructure. It's a massive social change, and Queensland doesn't have a good track record of managing infrastructure changes like that. I grew up on the Darling Downs during the boom of the CSG, and there are so many learnings from that aren't yet being applied entirely to renewable energy that we need to do better. But we also are seeing people push an agenda. They're capitalising on these genuine issues to try to extend the climate wars, which really has the effect of prolonging coal in Queensland. And I think part of the concern that I see is another angle to push the city versus regions divide in Queensland. And I think that part of the way that we within Southeast Queensland can try to combat this is, one, not trivialise the issues with large-scale renewable energy. There are so many problems with our planning frameworks and with the way that industry operates for the benefit of nature and communities in Queensland that we need to be focusing on making sure that the renewable energy industry does them better. But we can also, like Philippa and Anne have talked about, engage with our energy supply in a way that is not just something we are expecting people in the regions to deal with. We can take action to reduce our emissions at the household level, at the community level, and engage with the energy system in a way that's helpful for the grid. So yeah, moving our demand to the middle of the day when prices are almost always negative at the moment. Having community batteries that can soak up that solar and socialise the benefits of that for the peak demand period. And crucially, starting to think about the amount of energy that we need and getting better energy efficiency policies in Queensland. I don't think I have ever been so cold as in a Queenslander in Brisbane in winter, and that is insane. So there are a lot of ways that we can take control of our energy and start from that. And the things that the Queensland government can do to help this, as Philippa mentioned, is making solar more accessible for people. We currently have 30% of people renting in Queensland, and it's pretty much luck of the draw whether your landlord has decided to install a solar panel or not. And we have seen good progress from the LNP opposition to announce a solar for renters program, but it is still a subsidy, and there's a lot to be said for mandating that along with energy efficiency improvements for rental houses. We've also seen the Queensland government release a battery booster program that has had massive uptake in the last couple of months. So there's up to $4,000 means tested available for household batteries. And so these are parts of the ways that we can get to the targets that have been set out, and we're really watching with interest what's going to happen in Queensland Parliament next week, because the way that the government and the opposition approach these critical renewable energy and emissions reduction targets will really set the scene for the next 4 years, which is a critical period for taking climate action in Queensland.
Fabulously summarised. And I'm pretty sure that does make you an expert. So thank you very much, Claire. I'm going to hand over next to Joel Pringle from Solar Citizens. So Joel is a colleague of mine from down south, and he's come up tonight to be with us. So Joel is based in Newcastle on Arbuckle lands, and spent many years doing policy research and campaigning around consumer policy, housing affordability, cost of living, and shifting social norms to address discrimination. We said earlier, and many of the panelists have talked about, this is about climate justice, but this is also about social justice. And a lot of the work that Joel's been doing over the years has been around this. So, Joel, we've heard a lot about personal and community impacts, and we've heard what's going on in Queensland with an excellent summary there from Claire. But you said something to me earlier about $9 billion, and that's a big number. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yes, Tom, thank you. And of course, there are very big numbers involved when we're talking about potential for rooftop solar. And I'm going to talk to a report, which Tom's just going to bring up some slides. So I do have to apologise. When I did jump on the plane and come up, I did pack my slides with me, and I'll try not to dwell on them too much. But Solar Citizens released the Solar Potential Report. Well, shorthand is Solar Potential Report. Longhand is the rooftop solar potential of Australian housing stock by tenure and dwelling type. We commissioned the Australian Photovoltaic Institute to produce this report for us. Skip on, go next one, Tom. Here are just some of the headline findings from that. So, sorry. Okay, I'm going to have to read backwards. My apologies for my back of my head. So the report found that the rooftop solar potential of Australia's housing stock, all of Australia's housing stock, realised and unrealised, comes to about 60.9 gigawatts of capacity. Considering that the coal-fired capacity at the moment in Australia is around 22 gigawatts, it's quite, that's like, there are those big numbers starting to come into it. Now, about a quarter of that capacity has currently been realised. About a quarter. So we've still got a long way to go. If we were to meet that potential, we'd be looking at an employment program of about 48,000 people for 5 years. It's a lot of jobs. The bill savings we'd be looking at were around 1,300 per year for 5.7 million households who are currently without solar. Those bill savings all rolled up together for a period of 20 years at $9.3 billion. We would be producing approximately 61 terawatt hours of electricity each year. And that's on top of the 20 terawatt hours that are currently being generated by existing rooftop solar. And that's just focused on residential properties. And the greenhouse gas emissions, of course, the reductions there would be approximately 785 megatons over 20 years. And I won't actually, I'll put this slide in there, but I won't dwell in it. That's where the potential is, but it largely kind of reflects the population densities of those states. So it's actually a bit boring. I'll go on to the next slide. But who is missing out? So currently we know we have around 30% of households have rooftop solar already, and with Queenslanders leading the way, of course. But we also know that about 60% of households are currently locked out of both electrification and rooftop solar. And that's because they're renting, or because they're in private housing or in social housing, just because they're in apartments, and so community or strata type, not just apartments, but other household types too. Yes. And I've broken another card on this. I didn't only bring slides, I also put charts on the slides. I know that's a bit naughty of me. So don't look at all of the numbers. I'll just go very quickly if you can jump back there, Tom. We broke what we did in this report, and the Australian Photovoltaic Institute, the APVI did for us, was to break down that potential, not just by Australia's whole entire potential, but what happens if you look at all houses broken down by social housing, private rentals and owner occupied, and then also apartments broken down by social housing, private rental or owner occupied. And we can see the solar potentials for the different household types there. And that the costs of rolling out those programs, of course, that might fall on landlords or public landlords, or the homeowners themselves, and where those jobs are, because we would be looking at different programs to reach those different household types. So if you want to click there, Tom, thank you. And again, if you really want to have a look at those charts, they're in the report. You can find it from the Solar Citizens website. So what are these households missing out on? 60% of Australian households. We've reached around 30%. We continue to increase have more and more installations and larger installations of rooftop solar. So we've got about another 10% to go before we hit our heads on these households who are locked out. So what are they missing out on? Well, if social housing residents in a house could be saving around $1,459 a year. Currently, they're missing out on those bill savings. Similarly, in apartments, social housing, $767. The private renters in a house are missing out on bill savings of $1,539 a year. But their landlords aren't going to install solar panels. They're not going to, unless things change on a policy level, whether that's mandated installations or standards, but also incentives for those landlords to help them with the costs of that. We can talk about that in a moment. So how can we reach this potential? And this is by no means an exhaustive list, but these are some of the policies that Solar Citizens are arguing for and campaigning for at both Commonwealth level, at state level, and in some instances working with local governments. So we say that the Commonwealth, state and territory governments must commit to a target of 30% of social housing stock over the coming 3 years getting rooftop solar installed. We know that social housing stock in many instances is in such a dire state that putting solar panels will be very difficult without falling through the roof, without having to update meter boards or being concerned about the wiring. But we know that 30% of that stock could immediately be rolled out, and we've got to get started there. We know that half of those properties, those social housing properties receiving solar panels, we're arguing that they should also be receiving a solar battery, a household battery connected to virtual power plants to share the benefits of that investment to all energy users. We are arguing that the mandatory energy use reporting of rental properties, typo and all, and mandatory minimum efficiency standards for rentals are a must. It's not enough to provide incentives for landlords. We also have to look at the measures that are going to really drive their behaviour. But that has to be, we kind of talk about that as a carrot and stick approach. The carrot side being offsetting those costs for landlords through accelerated depreciation or other incentives. And we also talk about strata reform. So we've heard some examples of strata today where it's been done very successful, but we know it can also be difficult, convoluted, conflictual, and annoying. I'm in a strata association myself. I've been the treasurer for a few years. I can tell you it can be annoying because most strata associations don't deal with the issues faced by their strata property unless it is imminently important. They just kind of a set and forget. So we have to understand that process and know what's going to make a smoother decision-making process for people who are not spending a lot of time on it. So we're arguing that strata reform needs to be done to harmonise voting thresholds for sustainability upgrades to a simple majority. Instead of a 75% threshold, lowered to a simple majority across all jurisdictions. We've seen that happen in New South Wales. And we know for industry, people who are installing solar panels and associated tech onto apartment rooftops, that most of their new work at the moment is coming from New South Wales. And they put it down to this small change into strata laws. We think that that should be harmonised across the country. Yep. You can get involved. That's how Solar Citizens works. We've got a very small staff, very small team. So we've got Tom up here on the Sunshine Coast. Running the work in Queensland, but we have many volunteers, many supporters who turn out, who do a lot of work for us on our campaigns, and we wouldn't be here without them. But you can get involved by signing petitions. You could make a donation, of course, to Solar Citizens or any of the other wonderful organisations in the room today. Volunteering, and these things are, of course, what our movement relies on. But we rely on volunteers to turn out, much like you've turned out for the interest to hear today. And we also work through corporate partnerships. I'm sorry, that's from an old slide, not like this one, not like this one. But thank you, Ethical Jobs, for that partnership. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joel. Look, there's a lot of numbers and a lot of figures in here. I do encourage you, if you are interested, do have a look at the Solar Potential report. It's on our website. It was released on Sunday this week. And there really are some really important figures in there. We are going to now ask Dr. Vicky McLeod from Rewiring Australia to bring it all together. No, so Vicky leads the energy market reform work at Rewiring Australia. She's got more than 30 years experience in energy policy. She's got a background in the electricity supply industry, and she is very active in the community energy sector, and introduced me to many of the wonderful people here tonight as well. So now, Vicky, you said I should ask you something about the big picture and energy policy. So, being such a small topic, how do we rewire Australia so that we incorporate all of these brilliant ideas into the grid that we've got, and how do we go forward to make it better?
Maybe I should stand up for this one. Maybe I should leave the room. Thank you. Wow. So haven't we heard some great speakers here? And I think congratulations to everyone here and the audience as well. Bringing it together, I don't know. First of all, I'd just like to introduce Rewiring Australia. So many of you would know our founder, Dr. Saul Griffiths. So he founded Rewiring America, Rewiring Australia, and now Rewiring Aotearoa. I hear there's ambitions for Indonesia as well. So our message is pretty simple. It's electrify everything, and it's based on Dr. Griffith's energy analysis. So as we heard, it's solar PV on your roof, but it could equally be a green energy product. It's fuel switching from gas and petrol and diesel to electric sources, and then to have that electricity powered by renewable energy. It's also Yes, please. It's also about local generation, local energy markets, and as we've heard from Joel, to use all the available roof space for rooftop generations and solar PV. So why do we advocate this? Is so that we can displace energy that's coming from coal-fired power stations from long distances away. So we displace the need for additional transmission and cut down the energy waste. If it has to travel, there's some energy losses that go with that. And as I was saying before, local and renewable energy generation. Okay, so with that message, there's compelling personal savings and energy savings. So our analysis says that on average, you purchase electricity from the grid for about 28 cents, but you can generate it from your grid for about 5 cents. So that's just the energy cost, but you don't have to pay for the delivery costs. But there's also macroeconomic advantages as well. So this graph, and this is the Australian version of what the American one, and this was behind the Rewiring American colleagues, and they're arguing for what essentially ended up as the Inflation Reduction Act. So on the left is average household spend on energy, and in 2022 that was about $6,000. Of course, that's almost $7,000 now. And on the right is forecast, of course, CPI, the illegal war in Ukraine, and other things, that's the potential. But if you see the black line just above $2,000, then if you completely electrify your house, so retrofit at the end of an appliance's life, so instead of replacing like with gas, that you get a heat pump, or if you retire an appliance before the end of the technical life, then you just have to afford the capital expenditure. So because renewable energy, of course, is, free to run because it's free sun, then after the capital expenditure is being financed, is what we've got here, and the capital costs. But we're not forgetting that you purchase a cooker for cooking, hot water system for heating. And of course, with the forecast of costs of solar and batteries reducing at an incredible rate. So the estimates coming out of China are truly amazing. So, of course, there's not just the household behind the meter savings and the benefit that your interaction with the grid can give, in terms of those energy services. Of course, there's displacing at the time of high energy demand that we were talking about, but there's also, demand flexibility and power system services that can be sold. So in terms of community level, and Anne's talked about, saving the solar and banking the solar and the like, but we still have to have transport, of course, alternative sources and alternative transporting approaches in terms of planning, e-bikes and the like. So if the future is going to be efficient, electric and flexible, then this is the sentiment behind our work at Rewiring Australia. So in terms of electrifying everything, but not forgetting that communities who do this collectively, that they're more resilient. So as we saw Penelope's air fryer, that you can power things from the grid and vehicle to grid, again, it will be commonplace in the future. Thanks. Okay, so Electrify 2515. 2515 is a Wollongong postcode. So this is our prototype. So we've applied for an ARENA grant, but this is, a pilot, a living lab. And so the proposal is for 500 households to completely electrify them. So these are local figures, but, the argument is that you're spending money that goes outside your community as, imported oil, gas, or coal-fired power stations. And if you were to electrify everything, yes, please, then that spend does not go externally, but it goes to is available spend to have in the local community. So it's not only just a personal story; it's a macroeconomic story in terms of anti-inflationary, but it's also a local economic development story. Okay, so a bit about Electrify Everything's approach. So Anne mentioned that Zero Emissions Noosa has just been through the Electrify Everything community program as an expert group. So we took 10 groups that have been through that program. And I'm excited to announce that the latest Electrify group in Zero Emissions 4075, who are here tonight, are the latest ones off the cab. So we work from the top down in terms of we're very active at the policy and the political level. So we have been advocating with the Australian government similar large inflation reduction spend, the $1 billion for the Home Energy Upgrade Fund, and the like. We're active in terms of energy market reform, taking our pilots and making that mainstream. Social license, of course, but if we're displacing energy that's coming from the renewable energy zones, then we should be matching that focus, planning and investment for the equivalent in terms of community energy zones. So that's another thing we're calling for. And as I was saying, top down, bottom up. Okay. And this is just an example of our latest campaign. This is front page of the Fin Review with Saul's Jumping Dog Radar. And this, if we know, and it's been discussed tonight, that there's barriers to electrifying everything. So it's where do you start? I haven't got a clue what to do. And then after that, how do I get the money to do this? You have to find thousands of dollars in terms of upfront costs to retrofit equipment. How do you prioritise that? And the other thing, of course, that we've heard, which is the split incentives. If you're a renter, then, the landlord bears the cost, but the tenant bears the benefits. Accrues the benefits. So this is a HEX for household, if you like, is called Electrify Everything Loan Scheme, EELS, because they're electric already. And so that's a universal loan scheme. So if you as a household, a landlord or whatever, that you can borrow the capital expenditure and that loan is attached to your house. So it's a large figure. But there's, of course, the Australian government is looking with recognition of the macroeconomic local and household savings is certainly having open discussions about this. We're looking forward to the budget and some announcements. Sorry, what was the question you asked me?
To solve it all. I think you've done a very good job. Look, thank you so much, everybody. There was a lot of very big questions there, and I think you can all agree, but there's some really very, very big and fantastic answers there. So please, can we just have a quick thank you again to our panel for such amazing work. I'm also cognizant as well, we do have folk online who have joined us tonight, and sometimes being online is more difficult than being in a room. If anybody wanted to, who's online and wanted to drop any questions in the chat, feel free, or raise your hand and we'll come to you. I would really like to open up to the floor though. We said we'd have time for discussion tonight. Our panelists will be hanging around for a while as well. So, we've heard some incredible things. There's a lot we can do. You can electrify your home, you can electrify your car, you can electrify your community, and you can electrify the whole of Australia. We're on the path to doing it. We're not doing it fast enough. It's the cheapest way to do all of the things that we do anyway. We just need to get on with the job of rolling it out. But we'd really love to hear from some of you. Are there any questions that weren't covered by the panelists? Are there more things that you'd like to discuss? So I see one hand up at the back, first of all. Keep your hands up. I'll rove the mic, so I'll bring this one back to you now.
Thank you. Chris Walker, SEQ Community Alliance. So my question is, how important is the role and the attitude of local councils in changing the nature of our energy systems? And I had heard, of course, that Noosa was very helpful, but I suspect there are other councils less so. So is it a major issue, the nature of the local council? And if there are councils that are not well behaved, how do communities change that?
Thanks for your question, and I think it comes back to my call to action at the end of my segment, and that was talking to your MPs. I should have said talking to your elected representatives, because we are very lucky in Noosa to have a lot of like-minded councillors who understand the need for the transition process and moving the community towards renewables. I think part of this is because we're a biosphere, so it fits really well with being a UNESCO biosphere. But I think the important thing is talking to your councillors. We spend time briefing new councillors when they come into office, telling them about what we're doing, why we're doing it, why it's important, and talking to key stakeholders in your community. Because I did skip over a couple of slides, which was the fact that we work with key stakeholder groups in the community. So I think it's an effort between a whole lot of different entities in the community.
Hi, Brizzos. We live in Brisbane. We've just had a local council election. 25 years ago, I was Brisbane City Council's Energy and Climate Manager. I personally took the carbon reduction target to Civic Cabinet. Now, that they accepted that they had a role to, one, reduce emissions in the corporate sector, and then two, to have a role in terms of reducing emissions in the community. And that's in recognition that local government has power over 50% of emissions from the city. So transport, of course, landfill, wastewater and the like. I'd been away from Brisbane for 20 years. Coming back, I, of course, inquired about that target to find out that that had been disbanded. So Brisbane City Council doesn't recognise that they have a role in community energy reduction, which I think is up to us as voters to remind them that they do and that they have a great capacity to do that. And so this is behind, and that I see community groups like Energetic Communities and Zero Emissions 4075, The Gap, and in my own suburb, there's Zero Emissions Kurilpa. So if we can get maybe another group, maybe Coorparoo in a Labor thing, we've got independent LNP and Green now, that we can tip the city. So we don't want to do it over across 26 wards. We just want to do it to have enough momentum to do that. What do you reckon, Claire?
I'm going to pass to Philippa. You seem to want to say something.
Go on then. Yes, I'm hoping to say something. Yep, you're quite right. Brisbane City Council is going to say it's someone else's business. It's the state or federal government through their building regulations done nationally. Look, there's two areas that I'd like to see a council as big as Brisbane City Council working on. I'll be lucky. The first one would be car parks. Okay, that's not part of the building regulation, so they can take a lead here. Car parks are the place where you can charge your vehicle during the day, especially if you've driven to work. We need people charging during the day, not at night. We need all the demand shifting into the day. So they could take a lead here. And guess what? We're facing a climate crisis. Everything's going to get hotter. So we need to start putting some shade in our car parks. And you know what you could use for your shade in your car park? Solar panels. So here's a double win, okay, for people in car parks. Nobody else is regulating car parks in that sort of area. So that is something they could do. The second one is going back to body corporates. They could set up an assistance task force or something like that, just to be friendly to body corporates and to help them do it, because it's not difficult. If you're just incentivized, encouraged, there are so many subsidies going around. Who knows what's going to be announced tomorrow or the next day or yesterday? Just need someone to put them in touch, to encourage them and to make them realize, what the cost savings are going to be. So an expert task force in Brisbane City Council could really, really do that. Now, they're not going to leap to do any of those things. So I say, like we've just been told, just get on with it.
Thank you very much, Philippa. I'm going to now ask, sorry, I'm over here. I'm going to now ask that there's a lot of hands went up there, and I'm going to ask our panelists could we give very, very short answers? And I think I'm going to ask one panelist to answer each of the next few questions, just because I'd love to get through some of these questions. So please, gentlemen, I'm next. You should be on.
John Steely from Zero Emissions 4075. I'd really appreciate it if you could give us an idea of the economic aspects of bulk buying, and also is it advisable or not for your group to take a small amount from that as for funding.
And I'm going to pass the mic to somebody else while we come to that answer. So who else had their hand up?
Sure. Now I see Rob in the audience. I just asked him this question the other day. The margins in bulk buy aren't what they used to be. Is that correct, Rob? I'll talk to John afterwards. Hey, in terms of a community group, I think there's a lot you can do. So one is build trust with your neighbours, use positive neighbourhood effect, and then normalise what's coming. And what is the future energy state and the future energy market is what we've heard about today. Is you've got a generating power station on your roof, you modify your behaviour a small amount and you reap the benefits. It's as simple as that. You have, help work with all our groups and help in terms of advocating, in terms of changing the rules in the energy market. And then we just start to bring through innovation. It's really simple. Just keep calm and go solar.
Brilliant advice there. We have another question here from the centre.
Yeah, so I suppose one of the benefits of Australia having such massive houses is that we've got the roof space to put on solar panels. My house, I'd be flat out putting a 2 kilowatt system on. I've actually got one of the old local power 1 kilowatt systems from 2008 still on my roof. So I just wanted to ask about, it's all fine with panels and everything else, but making our houses more energy efficient, whether it's double glazed windows, mandating heat pumps instead of the standard electric water systems, bigger eaves on our roofs, that sort of business. So I just want to ask the panel if there's any work being done to look at subsidising, say, double glazing or wall insulation.
The short answer is yes, there's a lot of work being done and there is funding available and coming online at state and federal levels. But what I would recommend you have a look at is getting an energy assessment, because everybody's property is different. They have different needs, they have different things that will make a bigger difference to their energy use. It might be rooftop solar, it might be insulation if that property is in insulation, but also as a matter of making sure that government funding is best spent. Government programs should be looking to these energy assessments as well. And then there's a lot of work to be done to building a workforce to be able to make sure that we can do that at the scale that we need to.
Thank you very much, Joel. I'm hovering actually, sorry, Philippa. I'm going to jump in at the back here. I have some friends here from energetic communities who've been doing a lot of work in this space. I'm going to pass to that and I'm going to take one more question from the middle.
Yeah, thanks for that. So my name's Luke Reid from Energetic Communities. Just to answer Rolf's question there, a few other things is the Queensland government today announced they're about to do a, sorry, I'll leave that one out and make it a bit more quicker. But I think the answers are the National Construction Code. We need to go to net zero or even zero at the next iteration in 2 years' time. The laws have just changed, so it's going to be 7-star. But for existing houses, we also need to prioritise low-income households because they often have the poorest quality. And the Queensland government have had a couple of sort of rebates and things, but they've finished it and they've just announced, an increase in their solar and batteries. And they're also about to run a energy literacy program. And around the assessments, there are some things people can do, which is automated. AI is coming in, but it's good to get a professional to look at it. But there are a couple of key things: is your hot water, your sort of refrigeration, any of that sort of stuff are the biggest users, and your heating and cooling. And surprisingly in Australia, in Queensland, electrification, getting off gas is still really valuable, even though we don't use much gas. So get off your gas heating and your gas cooking, or gas hot water, sorry.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luke. I'm going to hand over to...
You can put your hot water on your solar system and get it heating up during the day, and that cuts off a third of your bill straight off.
Very good point. Thank you very much for that. Thanks.
Peter Moore from Angler Green. I work in the faith-based response to climate change. And I just not too keen on batteries on private homes. For me, I think community batteries would be more, I would imagine, I'd like your response, would be more economical. Personally, we use Power Local, and I'm paying about $20-30 a quarter to get 100% green power, so that they provide the storage. And because we really like to, our home's well insulated, and we got solar hot water thrown in with this land when we bought it. So we're in a good position. Our aircon runs an hour a year if we're lucky. We don't need it.
Thank you for that question, and that's a gift to allow me to advocate again for talking to your elected representatives, because community batteries, yes, fantastic solution, as you're saying, Peter, and particularly for people who are not able to afford their own home batteries. Zero Emissions Noosa is part of a consortium, as I said, who will have the only community-owned battery in Queensland by the end of the year. The others will be owned and operated by Energex. We are currently having to advocate very strongly to the Australian Energy Regulator for against the tariff that Energex want to impose on a community battery, which will make them financially unviable. So I'd be very happy to get your contact details afterwards, and if you would help us be part of the submission writing process to the AER, you can help get community batteries operating in Queensland.
Can I perhaps mediate on that? Look, community batteries from a resource perspective means that you have a shared asset, which means we don't have to individually have one. So from that perspective, but the energy market came from the old world system, which is, centralised coal-fired power stations, centralised dispatch, 31 of them, the objectives were productivity. So now we have to let them leave and the system, and we have to replace the services that they provide: electricity, power system flexibility, security, reliability, and all those things. But we're in a massive transition. Australia has decided, an enthusiastic uptake by Australians we have decided that, rooftop solar PV is the way we want to go. Other countries, it's, different history and policy and energy resources. So we're lucky here. So we have to now change the energy market rules as well. So this is one of the things with, the pilot 2515 bet also that we want to replicate this, is that we want to start to look at innovation, but business model, technology and regulatory innovation. And we can't just change from the old rules, which are embedded in 1,000 pages of electricity law, which takes about 2 years on average to change one rule. So we have to come together and advocate for hands-off innovation zones, so that we can start to practice these and come together and design. And that means the Energy Queensland to design their future system as well. If it's co-designing their own demise, I don't know, but
changing their business model.
So maybe I could provide a counterpoint on community batteries. Community batteries are very important. They're going to be very important of the energy system, and for many people, they will be the first best option. But if you can get a battery in your household, that in most instances will be the first best option for you. The reasons being, we've got one example of a community battery being community owned in Queensland. Most of them are being owned by the network operators. So that it's not what's being rolled out as community batteries are not necessarily what we had in mind when we saw those programs emerge. If you are sending your rooftop solar to a community battery and then back to your property, it doesn't skip the poles and wires. You have to pay rent on the poles and wires on the way through, and that changes the economics for it as well. But also, we're on the cusp in Australia of a massive increase, well, not massive, but an accelerated uptake of batteries on wheels. But we risk doing so without being able to use those batteries on wheels connected to our household. If we don't get to a charging and vehicle to grid, vehicle to home capabilities in there, both on the household side and on the vehicles. So just there's more to come in that space very, very soon, we hope. Solar Citizens is very active on that, and we hope to be able to continue that conversation with yourselves and with others as that develops.
Thank you very much. Tonight really is about carrying on this conversation as well. You know, we want you to go away tonight feeling energized in every sense of the word, and then keeping this conversation going. You know, there is so much that we can all do. There is so much expertise in this room. I feel quite humbled to be here tonight, to be moderating this session. We are running a little short on time, but we will be hanging around afterwards. There are 2 more questions in the room which I can take, which are very, very quick. And there's one online here. And then I would ask if we could, our presenters, please would you just hang around for a while outside. There are a few refreshments outside as well. So please do grab people as well. Online, we had a question which I think partially was answered there around how do you view the viability of urban communities joining together to possibly form virtual power plants and supply power to the grid? I think we've possibly touched on that, but I don't know if anybody else wanted to.
I don't know, we really have touched on that very much today, but certainly when we talk about storage and household storage and batteries, that has to be part of the policy there, because a battery on the wall will do wonders for that household, but there are so many potential other benefits for grid stability and other auxiliary services as well, which have to be built into any incentives that roll out. Others might have these.
We'll take a quick next response on that, and then I'm going to jump into these other questions.
I just wanted to say on that, I think what's really important, to understand what's in a virtual power plant, it essentially means that you are banding together with people and your retailer or aggregator has some level of control in exchange for a financial benefit to you of your battery. And so this is so that you are operating in the best way to benefit the grid. So when we think about, you know, what is resilience, it's not just about using your battery to meet your own needs, but about being willing to install a battery as part of the energy system to benefit the system as a whole. That's really important to have that mindset going into this.
Brilliant, thank you. Question from the gentleman in the white shirt.
Okay, I'm a member of the GAP Sustainability Initiative, which I believe is helpful working with Electrify Australia. We're one of the groups that has managed to get a community battery. And we're currently negotiating with Energex as to the best way of making use of it. As people would appreciate, a community battery will really only serve 20, 30 homes at most, something like that. So I agree that they are going to be useful, but I think if the government decided to really push for home batteries or batteries within a strata community or whatever, that would probably be the better way to go. And then you keep that, you're not sending it through the poles and wires, it's there and you can use it again. That would be my contribution.
I found out today that the Tesla Powerwall 3 is going to be expendable to 46 kilowatts of storage easily enough. You can just bung that in your home.
Yeah, look, as Joel was saying, and Claire also, in terms of your using your private assets for a benefit to the electricity grid. So when we're talking about a future energy state or a future market, let's start to talk about, one, do we have a clear vision of this? Do we have, you know, agreed objectives, and that's based on principles? And then if we start to, you know, then let that inform the options in terms of policies. So I think this is the kind of conversations that we need to have. Certainly our groups are contributing to that, and I just hope you join us and stay and continue to be enthusiastic and engaged.
Enthusiastic and engaged. There's our key words. We're going to take 2 more questions on the floor, sorry, because there's 2 very enthusiastic people here who are very engaged wishing to ask.
G'day. My name's Jan, and I'm involved with a small group of Friends of the Earth activists who are trying to stop the Mater Hospital burning coal to make steam for sterilisation. So, yeah, it's a legacy technology. They've had it since the early 20th century. We think it's time to stop. So I'd be grateful to hear any expertise from this room on what we could propose to them as a renewable energy alternative. We especially don't want them to say, oh, well, maybe we'll move to gas. So, yeah, we don't want them to go that way. We want to put a renewable energy proposal in front of them. So if there's any advice here that I might have from the panel or the room, I'd be grateful to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would just say, like, the space of industrial heat pumps is rapidly developing, but we need to understand what the Mater is actually using that for. Steam generation. Yeah. So I think that there are like increasing options for industrial heat pumps to generate high temperature steam, but it is unfortunately one of the harder to abate or like harder to achieve with renewable energy sectors, that high temperature heat, as I understand it.
I mean, I'm no technical expert, but in my vision, okay, these big inner city users of electricity throughout the day can benefit from us all having, everybody that has got a rooftop space having solar on it, because we will have extra and we can put it into the grid. They can use it cheap during the day. They can store it into batteries, these big buildings that don't have much in the rooftop space, and that can be their contribution to help steady it over the night. So pull it out of that grid during the day.
Thank you kindly. One more, maybe two very short. One more questions. One more question.
Oh, thank you everyone. I'm Milani Rawlinson. I'm the Environment Officer from QT, and I just wanted to know from your opinions what you would like to be seeing from students who are undergraduate students, for example, who are studying, and even postgrads at university level. What sort of action should we be taking to assist with the actions? Yeah.
Well, I think that there's a lot of, as I mentioned, climate activism that we need to be taking broader than, to agitate against the coal industry in Queensland. But maybe I'll pass to someone with an energy answer.
With an energy answer. And as a graduate of QUT as well, proudly engineering, and I've just finished a PhD there. Look, I always say, bring it up to the transformational level. What does that mean? I mean, say to the Vice Chancellor, we want this. This is our future. We want this. But yeah, Claire makes an excellent point of view in terms of Queensland. We're dominated by coal. There's no and coal seam gas. There seems to be no exit from that in the short term. So that's another thing we need to articulate about. The other thing in terms of the QUT campuses, and there's heaps of potential, and this is just engaged students in terms of designing their future. There's an excellent School of Design at QUT, so that's a great place to start. Let's design a future. I'm happy to come and help you.
Milani, I want to thank you for coming. She only found out about this event on Sunday, so I'm very pleased to welcome you. Thank you, Milani. Look, if anyone's keen, and you students may be more interested than some of us oldies, but I'm happy, go home tonight and Google Maps the rooftop over Bunnings, okay, at Wecker Road, Mansfield. Nothing on it. It's in a light industrial state. Virtually nothing on it. So I would be happy for students come and join me with a placard outside Bunnings say, where is your solar? Because this is the new frontier for rooftop solar in our cities. It's a whole solar farm there with nothing on it. Yeah, every shopping centre, have a look at Westfield. There's nothing on it.
And there's always a place for direct action as well. I'm going to take this question from here as well, unless Annie wanted to quickly comment on it.
Great case study example of that is IKEA in Adelaide, who are generating power. So Google online and look at that.
Yeah, Aldi, IKEA, those places, you're right. They've really sort of I don't work for either of those places.
Rick.
So
Nor Amber, neither does she.
my name's Rick Dalmo, and I used to work for Brisbane Catholic Education. And along the lines of the conversation, the turn it's just taken, they have 146 schools. They're there during the day. There's issues like, and they seem to me to be possibly solvable by microgrids within a particular school, say school parish situation, or even to the immediate neighbourhood with, you know, batteries and charging and EV chargers in the car parks with shade structures with PV on them, but possibly even wider. And I'd like, Vicky, you to talk about this if you could quickly or later by email, a virtual grid across that. So there's all sorts of regulatory issues, I suppose, but great opportunity, I think.
Thanks. Yeah, I was really pleased to hear about the Catholic education and really getting on board. And sorry, I was going to repeat my religious joke, but it just ends with Catholics as Presbyterians as motivated by a quid. In any case, and this goes back to QUT, what you can do behind the grid bed. There was some changes around embedded networks. I have to say, I'm not up to date with it, but in terms of, you know, the business case, especially where you've got air conditioning in schools and classrooms and with roof space, that's a fantastic match in terms of doing that there. I understand that you're doing metering and sub-metering, so you've got a clear visibility of that, and so then the economics come from that. So you just lead with, you know, the economics, and then decision makers. I think it pretty comes close to that. I've had the pleasure of speaking with a lot of community groups as well in other states, and then coming from a faith-based position. And it's very important for them to engage in climate change and justice, and that includes the Islamic religions as well in terms of this concept of ecocide. So it's really important that we just encourage leadership from wherever it comes. Yeah, so congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go radical here, but if people have to go, please feel free. I'm going to invite our panelists just to stay here for another 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to keep passing this microphone around because there's a couple more questions coming up. If you want to grab a quick snack while you're waiting and then bring it back in, feel free as well. I did just want to point out, though, if people do leave, before we carry on this conversation, Joel pointed out, Anne pointed out, Philippa pointed out, we've all pointed out there's plenty of things to do. There's plenty of ways to get involved in this. You know, we want people involved in this stuff. It's why we're all here. You know, sign a petition, go for it, join in. I will send an email around to everybody anyway, following this session, with some of these actions on it, with ways that you can be a part of this going forward. Make a donation to one of these wonderful organisations here. Engage, volunteer, contact us. We've got some amazing events coming up. And I'm going to ask you in a second just to mention the Noosa EV and electrify everything fair. We've also got Solar Citizens later on this year, along with several other organisations. We're running a renewable energy speakers programme. We're running one in southeast Queensland, more than likely around the Sunshine Coast region. We're running one up in Townsville. That is an intensive program. It'll be a day-long session, and we'll be looking at how to talk about these types of things, what the options are, what the alternates are, and what the policy options are, and how you can really be a leader in your community about it. So if you're interested in that, catch me afterwards, send me an email. I will send more details around on these things. But yeah, be involved. And you've got a microphone. Excellent.
Thanks, Tom. I've got some brochures that I'll leave out on the table. An invitation to you all to our EV and Electrify Expo on Sunday, the 16th of June. Don't be put off by the fact that the top of the flyer says boost your business, because this was actually designed for businesses who want to exhibit, but it's got all the key details on it about the kind of electric transport and electrify everything appliances that you'll find information about at the expo. We'd love to see you. Come to Noosa for a day trip or come for the weekend.
I just come to Noosa because it's wonderful. I would also very much like to thank our participants online. Please do, if you want to stay, I'll leave it open again while we're still in the room. So feel free to pop any questions on there. I'll bring the mics around again now. But just please join me once again in thanking our speakers, thanking our panel for a fantastic evening. And a fantastic lifetime's worth of work. This chap here had a question as well. John? Take this one just in case people online who also want to pop in. Yeah.
We have a sustainable house day event at Corinda Bowls Club on Sunday from 3 till 5, followed by an hour of networking. So if anyone wants to turn up, it's going to be fantastic. You'll be able to play tiddlywinks.
Brilliant, thank you. Another hand here. Gentleman in a blue shirt.
Thank you. Thanks to the speakers. It was a really great session. There's a couple of questions about community distributed resources. There actually is a partial solution in this space. Company in Sydney called Local Vaults, and they enable you to do net metering across different sites using the wholesale market rates. So sometimes you can figure out how to match loads across different metered sites, and that can help work for you. So it's called Local Vaults.
Thank you.
Hello, John Thomason from Zero Emissions 4075. One of the things I'd like to say is it's important that we go out and we chase people in the streets to change their minds. But what I think we need to do is to look at putting together business cases for people who don't know what is possible. For instance, if you wanted to put solar on the roof for Bunnings don't own their properties. It's owned by another organisation. That's what Solar Alliance is doing. They work with the owners of these organisations to actually put solar on the roof and establish what do they call it? It's a purchase arrangement where you can put the separate organisation can put solar on the roof, have it there under their ownership for the period in which it's paid off, and then that equipment then becomes the property of the original owner. And that's the way to get it done. And if you don't get any joy with that, yeah, let's go out and stand in the front of their foyer and make a song and dance. But also at the same time saying, we've got a plan for you guys and you're not listening.
Bring it on. Any more for any more? We all want a cup of tea or all want to go home? Somebody else had a question.
With community batteries, when I looked at the costings of all of those things, and it actually didn't, it was probably cheaper to get your own battery than a community battery. And long term, it's definitely cheaper because there are no costs in terms of wires and poles. Because I'm with Amber and they're using the wholesale electricity price. That's what it's all based on. And you can see my feed-in tariff on the cost of electricity. You can the difference between those is the poles and wires, and like it's just so simple to because it's actually all the cogs and wires and everything that's needed to manipulate people to use electricity in the most efficient way is all set up. It's already there, and it's a cost-driven scenario. You know, like during the day it's free, and at night it's expensive. So with the wholesale, if everybody was on the wholesale electricity, it would all the actual way we use electricity would evolve pretty quickly, I think. And everybody seems to be trying to make it a bit more difficult than it needs to be. You know, the way that certainly none of the energy companies are going to be sort of keen on this model because they're no longer running the show. They're still going to make money, but not to the degree that they are, and they're not going to control us like they have been. So, you know, like there is a community battery cost, it was like $100,000 or $300,000. Like the Powerwall 3 is going to be about $10,000, probably about $14,000 fitted. And so that's like 10, 15 people. And there's no pearls and wires, it's in your house. So, at least, that's what I see anyway. I can't see that sort of being all that helpful in the long run, because they're going to control you. You're going to have to send the electricity out and then suck it back in and pay for it.
That's why we've got to get community batteries financially viable. Community batteries have the advantage of everybody in the local neighbourhood being able to share and keep that energy locally, rather than installing their own private batteries. I think we're on, well, at the moment, the federal government does. But this is new technology. As we've said tonight, we're at the cutting edge. Like when solar was first invented, everybody thought their house was going to burn down if they put solar panels on the roof. So watch this space, it'll evolve. And I think if we refer back to the themes of the Coalition for Community Energy Conference that was held recently in Sydney, fast, fair and vital, the transition has to be fast, it has to be fair, and it has to be vital. And to get all that happening takes some doing. Watch this space, we'll get there, but we need everybody to help us on the journey.
And I think as well, it depends on the energy companies, right? I think in Queensland, we don't have smart meters in most of our houses. Say what? I mean, there's countries around the world where everybody has a smart meter. And it changes your behaviour incredibly. Mike and I were talking earlier before the thing, and he was showing me his app that shows you what your energy usage is. And no, yes, but it also comes with other energy. Yeah, you're right. But it also comes with other energy companies as well. So there's companies like, so I was on a tariff in the UK, for example, with the company, you get free energy basically if you use it at a certain time, because they tell you when it is. And now we know that there's negative cost of energy when the sun's shining a lot in Queensland, especially. So yeah, let's try and harvest. Let's try and make the most of that. And actually, the energy companies just need to change. And I think they will. I think the signs are there. They have to change. They have to evolve to keep up with. Someone else had a hand up here.
So I think we've run over time. We might continue this conversation.
We're well over time. Yeah, don't worry. One more question from the floor. That's it.
Yeah. Sorry, just one quick last question. How would like in Queensland, where we've got a monopoly network provider and it's government, it's publicly owned. And I know that there's overarching national marketplace. I mean, how do you guys see that reforming so it can kind of support a model where people are incentivised for the right behaviour? You're not penalising people for sharing distributed resources and things like that. How would that organisation change, or what reforms need to happen to make that?
It might not be very well. Initial response. I'm not sure that Queensland would necessarily want to go down the route that other jurisdictions have with retail competition. There are benefits that come from that, but there's also been a lot of difficulties that they've gone through that process. So, yeah, I'm not sure if other panelists have a response. Other than competition coming from getting control over our own energy systems ourselves.
I think we'll take one last comment and then we'll close.
I think it's back to your elected representatives. They're there to serve us. They've got to start doing that better.
Sorry, I thought Claire was going to say something. Energy market reform is incredibly complex. And so to understand it implies that you work for an incumbent. If you understand the rules and don't work for an incumbent, then you're a very special beast indeed. So to be able to pull the curtain back on the rules and then to examine these things and understand them is where the difficulty is. So I think currently with the Australian government that they're all ears, that they want advocacy groups like ours to bring these issues together when they don't necessarily have that visibility. So the other thing is that these Energy Queensland network providers, energy market regulatory bodies, that they are working in a political environment as well. So they will do things at ministerial direction and that type of thing. So again, we've got the opportunity to close the loop on this. Do we have the opportunity if there's a change of government at the Australian government level and suddenly it's a nuclear policy? I don't know, but just support our work and we're all got bits of the puzzle, I'd say.
Perfect way to close it off. Thank you very much, panelists. We said we'd finish about 10, 15 minutes ago. We're still going. I'm sure we'll keep going outside, but just join me again. Thank the panelists one more time for a fantastic session. And thank you all for coming along. We'll be in touch.
The government is paying for it. They should just subsidise double that, and give half the subsidy that you want to pay for it.
I know, yeah.
And people will be happy and they'll feel very special. Yeah.
Sorry, I just...